Hello and welcome to Sidequest. This is our weekly video game show here at Geekverse. I am your host, the little guy that packs a punch, Dylan Musk, and I have with me the giant, Taylor Field. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing good. I am happy to be here for what we're going to be talking about because this had a little bit of a delay to it, at least the
Yeah,
review.
it's true. This and we announced that on SideQuest too. But the release date of this game was confusing because there was an early access period that you could pay extra for. But then like the actual release date was like a Tuesday, which is very odd for games, or Monday night or something like that. So yeah, we're kind of thrown off there a little bit with the release date. But here we are to talk about Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. You're also going to get a second episode of SideQuest this week, talking about the Game Awards and games we've been playing. That's the standard SideQuest episode, but this is a little offshoot, little separate thing here, just to talk all about Indiana Jones. So that's what you can expect here today. So I'll keep it quick on the plugs, and we can get right into it. Really, I think the main thing I want to shout out here is like if you're an Indiana Jones fan and you want more content. Well, last year in the lead up to Dial of Destiny, we did a retrospective of all of the movies that exist. And then we also, of course, did a review of Dial of Destiny. So if you want to go check out that stuff, there's many more hours of Indiana Jones content. And then other than that, head over to Patreon. You get episodes early and ad free. A big shout out to our Patreon producers Aaron Braden, April of Darkness, Jack Grant, Mud Sam, Superbad Mike, TGGLM69, Jeremy Renner, and Charlie Randell. So thank you, all of you, for keeping the lights on here, letting us keep making beautiful content here, and in this case, 2 SideQuest episodes in a week, which is kind of fun. We're gonna get right into it here, Taylor. Little Indiana Jones action. So, as we mentioned, this game's been out for about a week now. We've had a chance to play it. In terms of some table setting here, I beat the game last night. Finally, it took me about, I want to say, around 15 hours, and I kind of mainlined it, but definitely did a couple side quests here or there. And then Taylor, from our conversation, it sounds like you're just about, I'd say, over halfway. You're kind of at the end of the. I don't know if you've played more. Have you played
I
more
did play
since?
more, and I
Okay.
feel like I'm kind of on my way out the door out of Giza.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. So that's, yeah, to my estimation, about halfway through the
Okay.
game. Um, and yeah, so I guess my other question for you right off the top was, have you ever played any other machine games things? They make all the Wolfenstein games. They've made the recent Quake stuff. Have you played any of their games prior to this?
Ooh. I haven't played any of the recent Quake. I played some of the older, well,
Okay,
one
I
of the
think they
older
only
games.
worked on the motor because I think Machine Games is a pretty new studio, like formed like 2010 or something like that. So
Okay.
yeah.
I played a little bit of Wolfenstein. I bought one, I'm pretty sure, and I have it,
Okay.
but I haven't revisited it. And then the old ones, I used to play a lot of the old ones, but
Gotcha.
I don't know if they had their hand in those
No, I don't think.
old
I mean,
floppy disk ones.
maybe some of the team members did, yeah, but I think they were kind of formed past the floppy disk era. As for myself, it's really short. I've only played Wolfenstein Youngblood, which is kind of a weird one to go to, but I kind of wanted like a quick, shorter Wolfenstein game to play earlier this year, just to get in the mood of machine games and see what they've made before. And I plan to go through some more of them because they have been recommended to me over the years. But played through Youngblood earlier this year, which talked about on SideQuest, so you can go back and check that out if you want. So we're both kind of green in the gills here when it comes to the I guess machine games as a developer. But yeah, to talk about the game, I think normally on a side quest review, we're more like talking about like impressions or as we're going through things. We don't normally do like a big review episode. It happens every once in a while. But when we do, we don't normally do like a spoiler free section, like a typical review. I think we should do that in this case for a couple reasons. One, it's Indiana Jones. It's a very like story focused game. And I think for a lot of people are going to pick this up on PlayStation when it comes out there in a few months. And so maybe people just want to get little impressions now, and then they're going to play the game in a while. So we'll just do like, I don't know, a few minutes here talking about the game in a very non-spoilery light or spoiler light way. And then we'll kind of announce when we're going to go deeper into spoilers and we can talk more about that stuff for people who just want to get a taste. It's also like, fairly long game, longer than I would have expected, I guess. I mean, 15 hours doesn't seem like much, but it seems like I kind of blasted through it pretty quick relative to other timelines I've heard. So yeah, some people might take a while to get through it. So yeah, I guess just throwing it over you, Taylor. How are you feeling about this game as you're about halfway through here? What are your impressions thus far?
I'd say it's very positive. I've had one very nasty bug that
Ooh.
occurred, and it's basically like a gameplay inhibitor. You can't continue,
Oh
and I
wow.
feared the
Okay.
worst. If I had to Google. I'll just put this out there now. I had to Google a fix for it because otherwise the only fix would be to restart your game altogether. And basically what happens is your whip mechanic and using things in your inventory, you basically can't. when you get your little prompt to use your right bumper to throw your whip up, it basically does not do that. It basically is a bug that axes everything that you can use. It's ridiculous. And so you cannot progress further on. And so the fix to that is basically go back to, you can load certain points where you started before, other missions. Thank God you could do that, because I had to do
fast
that
traveling essentially to like a previous location, you mean?
No. So basically reloading a previous save, I guess, is what I meant. And so you
Okay,
reload that
but
previous
wait.
save before the bug occurred.
Gotcha. But question about that, because I like, as far as I can tell, there aren't any save slots. So how does that work? Because the game just auto saves. I didn't know there was a way to actually make a manual save.
It does autosave, and I can't remember how I got into it, but you go into
Maybe from the menu or something you can do it.
from when you hit your start button and you go into like your there's a page you can go into, and you can select different chapters and different parts of your story that you saved. And so I first went way too far back. I went to like the very start of the game, and I was like, oh, this is too much. And I went back into that menu. I was like, okay, I can go back up and see like where I can choose where I want to drop back into the storyline. So if you encounter this bug, you just got to revert back to a point in the story before this bug happens.
Gotcha.
And then you can play okay. But there's a point in the game that I think a lot of people feel it kind of occurring. Hopefully they get a fix for it, because it was really disheartening. I got all this way and I had to redo a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, that's frustrating. Yeah.
Other than that, I think the story is very engaging. I'm a little bit on the fence about how the gameplay feels. Some of the stuff I'm not particularly fond of, but I'm enjoying a lot of just I'm enjoying it and kind of semi not enjoying it, but I'm definitely on the side of more so enjoying it, because you literally are doing everything. If you're putting a key into a lock, you're turning that key as well. Like if you are moving levers or anything, like they are making sure that you are actively a part of every single aspect of this game, so you feel much more immersed. And I respect that and I appreciate that, because it's a very immersive story, and they've really done a great job at capturing Indiana Jones. I don't recall the voice actor's name, but he's fantastic.
Troy Baker.
He is just on point. The way that they do the cinematics, it catches me off guard when it'll be like, I feel like 6-7 minutes goes by and I'm just getting this whole long cutscene. I'm like, I am digging this. This is fantastic. So many things just make this a wonderful successor, and I'm glad that this is an actual canon story that's just slided into the Indiana Jones movies, because they do a really, really good job with this. And don't get me wrong, I would be happy to have this as an actual movie. I would be so down for that, but I think that this has proven itself to be a very, very worthy successor for this franchise. I remember reading an article about how a game like this would actually be evident on a future direction for sequels. So instead of doing like a movie kind of thing, like a legacy sequel or something like that, basically do something like this, because you can actually you can flush things out more. You can make it a little bit more of a true experience than maybe just, I don't know, copping out on fandom and that nostalgia of doing like a legacy sequel, where most legacy sequels maybe don't always get the best reviews. I was telling Travis that after we played some of this game, he was playing it, I was playing it, that, man, they should do this for Star Wars, because I think that would just be a huge untapped kind of market. We've had so many other takes on it, but this on a Star Wars scale would be absolutely wonderful.
Where do you differentiate this from Star Wars Outlaws that came out earlier this year?
Star Wars Outlaws is just so open world, and I was afraid, like, I'm at a point in my life where, like, you know what, the open world stuff, it's just getting a little bit too far out for me. I just don't have that kind of level of commitment. But this, where it feels open world, but it's still contained, and it doesn't feel overwhelming. It's like, okay, you get objectives, you can do different things, but it's not this whole massive world. It's still a forward pushing narrative, and I actually feel like, okay, everything in here is within reason. I can muck around for a bit and spend a few hours here and do this, but it's not it doesn't feel like a huge time sink. Like it can be if you have no idea what you're doing and you're stuck on some puzzles.
Pick up every piece of medicine, pick up every relic. Yeah, you could really
Absolutely
rack up that time count.
Yeah, but other than that, I think it's proven itself to be engaging for me, because it's just this consistent narrative moving the story forward and everything like that. and that's where I kind of differentiate it from Outlaws. Outlaws was just it got so overwhelming and just so much going on and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But this, they've got so many appropriate little details and so many fun little things, and the dynamic between the characters. I love all these characters in this movie. I love the villain, and there's one moment I can't wait to talk to you about because it's hilarious, and there's so many Indiana Jones-isms in this
Yes,
game. They
definitely.
really nail it, and yeah, I think that this is a great game, and I highly recommend it if you have not tried it yet.
Very nice. Yeah, it's funny hearing you describe this. I didn't have that game breaking bug as you did, but I feel like otherwise I had a very similar trajectory to you, but then things maybe changed in the second half of the game. So I think the best way I can really describe this for myself was that I feel like this is a great Indiana Jones movie. I think all of that element of it is stellar. Like same as you. Like I think the story is very fun. Like the cinematography is really great in this. It feels like a movie in that way. Just the certain camera angles, or the way it's like following an action scene, or that's just characters talking or conversation. The voice acting and the characters across the board, I'm really enjoying them. Voss, as you mentioned, the main villain there. I think he is so fun. I'm not gonna say I like him because he's a Nazi, but like as a villain, he's very entertaining. The game's funny, and like I feel like a lot of games when they are funny, it's because of like janky mechanics or maybe just like silly, crazy things happening, like in Hitman. But in this, I feel like it's just it's just well written, and because of that, that's why it is funny, which is kind of a rare thing for me in like video game stories. So yeah, in terms of it being like an Indiana Jones movie, I think it's great in that way. And as you mentioned too, like I think I saw an interview before it came out that there's like about almost 4 hours worth of just straight up cutscenes in this game. Like straight up like kind of filmed cutscenes with specific camera angles and all that sort of stuff. So that's a long Indiana Jones movie, and then you add in like the character things and the story stuff that's happening in between the actual cutscenes. There's a lot here. It really, I guess, feels more like a TV show of an Indiana Jones thing rather than like just one movie. And I think on the opposite side of things, it's with the gameplay where I feel like this is where it was a great movie. I feel like it's a pretty mediocre game, and that really changed for me in the second half specifically. And that's not an uncommon thing for games. I think a lot of games really try and make those first areas super duper good so that people who just play a bit of the game or are just getting into it love the game right off the bat and hopefully stick with it. Or if they only played a bit, they have a good impression of it. And then usually like those later levels get a little bit less iteration, little bit less content. And that kind of feels like the case here, and just in terms of some of the design of the later areas. So it's funny, like to where you are in the game, I feel like I was very, very hot on the experience. And then in that back half, it really kind of dropped off. But I think there's a lot of little things like the combat in this. It's very messy, which leads to at times some really fun like slapstick moments, which feel very fitting for the franchise. But then other times it feels so messy that I can't really get a handle on it, or you get so many enemies aggroed on you at one time. It's like, I don't know how you're possibly supposed to fight all these guys. Like I've seen clips on Reddit and people are really good at this game, but I am not. I'm like, I feel like I'm a pretty mediocre player, but some of these things feel impossible. I think the stealth is like really underbaked, and that's definitely like a bias thing because I play so much Dishonored and Hitman and other stealth games that I maybe have a little bit higher expectations there. I think the puzzles are generally okay, but none of them are like particularly great, and some of them don't make any sense. And I had to look up some walkthroughs and like, I don't know what you want from me here. There's not enough guidance. And then I think really the biggest point against this is kind of what I said earlier, is like the pacing. There is, I'll say this without spoiling the location, there is a water focused area in the back half of the game. And that was like 3 hours of my life that I wish I could get back. It was awful. I hated almost every second of that, other than like the character story stuff. But the actual gameplay of that area, just I was tearing my hair out. I was so mad playing through it. Which is
Water Temple.
Yeah, it's classic water stuff, right? Every game's got to have a bad water level, and then some of the other stuff with like the second half of the game, a lot more linear, and I think some of that is okay, but it's not fantastic. There's one area that a very cold location, I'll say, that I did like that part a lot. So yeah, I'm feeling kind of mixed on the game overall, and even some of those earlier areas, I felt like there was so much freedom, as you mentioned early on, but I can bring up some examples when we get into the spoiler section of how I felt like that freedom kind of faded away a little bit when I was pulling more on some of these strings, so I can talk a little bit more of that in a bit, but I think that's kind of my overall thought. Considering how expensive games are these days, is this a recommendation for you? We're both playing through Game Pass, so it feels like a much easier pill to swallow. But let's say there's the PlayStation listeners out there who trying to get an idea of they should pick this game up when it comes over there and they have to pay $90 for it, $80. Is this a recommendation for you? Only if you're a super big Indiana Jones fan, where would you put that recommendation?
If you're a super big Indiana Jones fan, I'd say buy it. Buy it. Now, if you are, just scraping by and you're trying to save some dollars this Christmas, whatnot, or just in the new year, then I think you could get away with waiting for a sale. Even if it was to go $5-10 off, that's a win, and you could buy it then. But if, I guess, like I said, if you're a big fan and you love Indiana Jones and the stories that we've seen so far, then I think this is the game for you because it's pulled me in.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with that. Any other non-spoilers thing? I'm going to bring in Clay's question, but do you have any other non-spoilers thing you'd like to mention right now? I guess music, they pull a lot of those themes in here, but the new stuff's really great as well. I want to say this, that I feel like when I saw the trailers for this game, one, I thought it was going to be very different in structure. Like, I didn't think it'd be as open as it is at times. But also, I thought the game looked not great in the trailers, like visually speaking. This game is beautiful. I think the cutscenes, not quite that top echelon. But when you're just walking around the world, you're in like Vatican and like the lighting and like the tiles and all the art on the wall. And obviously, there's tons of historic relics and things like that. This game is beautiful when you're actually in game. That's one thing I feel like really misled me a little bit from seeing those trailers.
Yeah, I agree. Visually, it's just astounding. There's lots of things to discover, and you don't have to feel like you're rushed to go through like the main story, because you can just invest yourself in an area for a very long time if you want and just indulge and explore. And they've done a really good job at giving you different things that you can engage with and have fun with. And like there's a lot of surprises in here, a lot of surprises that I was not expecting. And I really do appreciate it. And as much as I wasn't a fan of the way the movements were and such at the beginning, you kind of like, okay, you click into it, and it kind of makes sense as you kind of progress further through the story. But other than that, yeah, score is great. Everything about this just feels like Indiana Jones, and it's just a dang good time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's just bring in Clay's question here, and then we can go to our first ad break and get into the spoilery stuff. But he asks, do you all think that the positive reviews of Great Circle, if paired with good sales, could lead to more Indiana Jones movies or video game content? If so, would you be comfortable with them moving forward without Harrison Ford? Or would you rather keep his likeness and stay in video game format? So, I mean, I think, first of all, even if this game does sell amazingly, which I think it will sell pretty well, especially when it hits PlayStation, I think that's going to capture a big part of the audience, because this seems like, I feel like the kind of people who typically buy a PlayStation are into games like this. Maybe, I don't know necessarily the Indiana Jones IP, because that's just kind of like an old man IP, I feel like, at this point. But in terms of like the gameplay style, it feels kind of like one of those prestige PlayStation sort of games. I don't think this is going to lead to a movie in any sort of way, just because of how much Dial of Destiny bombed. Like, it was a pretty big bomb for them. It lost Disney a lot of money. So I don't think they're going to take that risk now. I think in the future they could try it again, but I think maybe they would, I don't know, try a TV show or a special, or I don't know, something else, just to see if the general audience is more into that before maybe dipping into a big movie. But I think if this does sell well, I could definitely see Machine Games just working on Indiana Jones games for the next decade and just make like a trilogy of games or something like that. And I think I'd be down for that, even though if I have issues with this game, I feel like that's the kind of stuff that would get cleaned up in a second game. Like the story stuff they nailed. I think it would just be gameplay that I'd like to see refined in that sequel. But yeah, I think that this could definitely lead to more games if it sells well, but not a movie necessarily. Even if this was the best-selling game of the year, if it sold 20 million video game copies, I don't think Disney would greenlight a movie because of it.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think that the success of this will definitely warrant another game, a follow-up. I think as well, though, that you could see something live action, but Dial of Destiny definitely did set them back a bit, and it's unfortunate because that was the last hurrah with Harrison Ford, technically. I mean, that was him donning the character once more. But we also know that they successfully did the de-aging thing, and we got a whole sequence of a young Indiana Jones in that movie. So you take that and you take this voice actor and you put them together, and you've got a pretty dang spot on Indiana Jones, because that de-aging tech is just going to be getting better, and as the weeks turn to months and months turn to years. But I think, unfortunately, with Dial of Destiny, it was really just the story and some of the relations with the characters and whatnot that just didn't pan out. And there just wasn't a lot of like juice or sustenance and a lot of indieisms in that movie necessarily, at least for me. And then when you look at this game, it's like, holy crap, this is living, breathing Indiana Jones right here. Like, this is a fantastic game, and the story feels like Indiana Jones. And it makes me wonder, because you have people writing these movies and you have people writing the games. And so what are the headspaces between the two? Because I think if they wanted to do another live action project with an Indiana Jones, then they should get writers that are thinking the way that these writers are, because these writers clearly know how to write a fleshed out Indiana Jones story that is a great successor to the original one that everybody loves. So I think that's one of the big hiccups. They just got to make sure they get the right team and the right minds that are writing up a good story. Because like you said, Voss and all these other characters, like, they're so good. Like, you love to hate them and you hate to like them.
Yeah, I mean, even like the side characters, like I love that every shopkeeper in this game is like a named character, and not all of them has like a fleshed out storyline, but they all have like a unique voice. They have a name. Before you can buy anything from them, you have to talk to them and have like a full on cutscene conversation. Yes. And then like all the supporting cast as well. Like each area kind of has like a support character who's helping you through that particular location for the most part. I really enjoy all those characters too, and it's not like they all have a huge arc or something like that. It's just the little things of the performance. They have a cool look, they have a good demeanor, all that kind of stuff. That I feel like, yeah, as you mentioned, like it's not just Indy and the villain. Like they get the whole cast right. That feels like, yeah, a roster that could fit in kind of these movies. And then I guess the other part of that question, moving forward without Harrison Ford, I feel like that's just something that would, inevitably 20 years from now, when we get like an Indiana Jones reboot situation and they have Indiana Jones again and it is Indiana Jones but it's just a new guy playing him, I think that's when you could maybe go for that kind of thing. But right now it wouldn't really make sense. And then I think even like, Harrison Ford, I don't know how old he is, but like he's probably not going to live for another 20 years. So like at some point there will even be that cool down period where people will be like, oh, it's too soon, Harrison Ford just passed away, like we don't want like some other guy playing this iconic character. So that's where I think it would take a while. I don't think I would want Troy Baker to transfer over to the live action side of it. He has done some live action stuff, like he was in the Last of Us show. If anyone doesn't know, he plays Joel in the Last of Us, and then in the TV show he played like a minor character in there, but obviously that was live action. I don't know if I'd want that, but I think he should definitely, hopefully, stick around and continue to voice this character for a while. Because at times, I did like Troy Baker has such a noticeable voice that I sometimes was picking it out as him trying to be Harrison Ford. But then other times, I feel like he really completely faded into it. So I feel like he did just a really good job, obviously there. So, yeah, I guess do you have any thoughts on that second part of the question in terms of what they would do without Harrison Ford or recasting that kind of stuff?
Ooh, again, I just think they would resort to the de-aging CGI stuff, and yeah, just find a voice actor, or maybe you just get, I mean, with the way AI is working now and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, no.
I mean, Harrison Ford just has to say a bunch of words, and then AI can just generate him saying anything. Really, it's kind of crazy.
You know what's funny about you saying that is there was a controversy a couple of years ago where Troy Baker, the voice actor of Indiana Jones here, he like signed up with like an NFT AI voice company for like them to use his voice in doing exactly what you're saying there. And then I think he like pulled out of it when like everyone on the internet was like, fuck you, why are you doing this? Like, this is awful for voice actors and everyone in the whole industry. So it's funny that you say that, because there's some precedent there. And I mean, hey, if he's willing to do it and like Indiana Jones continues with his voice, then there you go. Maybe there's a possibility for that. He could make some big money by like being a Harrison Ford impersonator and like selling his voice out to NFT. Well, maybe not NFT companies, because I don't think that's going to be around for too long. But AI voice companies, I'm sure, will be huge going forward. So that's funny. Okay, let's take our first ad break, and then we will get into some spoilers. We will be right back. Okay, we are back. All right, spoilers. I guess here's where Taylor is here at the end of Giza. presumably just locking down this final mission or two. So that's kind of where the spoilers will be broken out into. I don't really feel the need to spoil anything beyond that. As I mentioned, I like the snowy, cold area, and then the water area I absolutely hate. But I don't really feel the need to spoil anything beyond that, especially for you, Taylor. Like
Can
I'm
I?
guessing
Well, I
you
mean,
will. I'm guessing you do plan on seeing this game through.
I'm planning to see this game
Yeah.
through, and I was gonna say, can I just make like my prediction or assumption of where I think this is going?
And then you want me to confirm or deny these things based on what you said?
I'll only do
Okay.
one guess. I'll do one guess. That's it.
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
Are we going to be like looking into like Noah's Ark kind of stuff?
There is some Noah's Ark stuff in here for
Okay.
sure. Yeah.
Okay. The trajectory of that stems from certain things in the Vatican. There's certain symbolisms. And then the big thing with this story being the Nephilim and the giants and how, like, I know Noah's Ark, like the flood was supposed to come in. Everything
Okay,
about this story
interesting.
and that kind of the religious aspect, I've been eating it up. And it's just fascinating and wonderful to be touching on all these different historical aspects and just seeing it brought to life in this game.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
like the
Nice.
flood comes in, supposed to wipe out the Nephilim and everything because
Right.
fallen
okay.
angels were sleeping with humans, and then they had giants, the Nephilim, which people think is Bigfoot as well, which is why I was getting super excited that this game was just diving into all this stuff.
Well, I'll
so.
say I did not see any Bigfoots, but once again, I did do all the side quests. Maybe there's a Bigfoot side quest.
I
But
doubt
I
it.
mean, dude, you are truly embodying Indiana Jones. You're figuring out here. Like good read on the
I'm
Noah's
there.
Ark
I got the
stuff.
cap and the whip on.
I think you'll be satisfied with the ways that goes there. But I mean, it's like a dense game. There's a lot to it, and obviously you're globe trotting, so you're finding like all sorts of mysteries from all over the place, right? There's a ton of locations in this game. But okay, yeah, going forward, I guess we probably won't really be spoiling anything very specific beyond Giza, but now that's like fully broken open, so we can get into that. And I guess we can maybe just start from the beginning and just the first area is really more of a shout out, but kind of recreating the Raiders of the Lost Ark opening sequence. I mean, I think that's like a fun little tutorial section of like learn the controls, walk around a little bit. And that's also when I was immediately like, oh, wow, this game looks great. Like visually, it looks fantastic, except for maybe some of the character faces at times. But that sequence was really fun. It was really cool to get to play through that. And I think it was framed well in the story of like, it was like a nightmare, right? And he like wakes up from it or thinking back on it kind of thing. So I really liked that.
Yeah, that was really unexpected, and that's one of the things immediately that made me just kind of want and crave for a Star Wars experience like this, a game like this that is Star Wars oriented, but they do a flashback, and I couldn't even imagine it like just getting to experience something Star Wars related like they did with the beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
You keep mentioning the Star Wars thing. Like, is there a specific character you're wanting this sort of experience from?
When I saw this and I thought, wow, just that, but translated to something in the original trilogy. It could be, I don't know, any one of just Luke doing something. It could be, Han Solo, whatever character they picked. Or I mean, heck, like even like Anakin or like a Jedi, I don't know, something like that. Like there's just, it's a sandbox. And for them to not just create their own like Indiana Jones doing his own thing or adventure, but actually do this homage to Raiders of the Lost Ark and having him here and just, as you said, using this as a tutorial, it was great. Everyone, whenever people, when you hear Indiana Jones, you think about this moment. This Raiders of the Lost Ark is definitely, and this scene in particular, this is what my mind goes to, even though we have so many other movies to think about as well. But the ball rolling behind Indy and him switching the little figure on the pedestal with the bag of sand, and then him just escaping. All of that is just what's implanted in my mind when I think Indiana Jones. And so to actually get to experience that and be moving, and it's like frame for frame what the movie was, but you're experiencing
Alfred
it
Molina
awesome.
in there, you know. I doubt he voiced it, but at least get him in there.
So that was great. It was a really, really good starting point, and everything that followed, the setup, and just again Marcus Brody popping in there, it was just so much fun. And again, this is where it puts its foot down, and you really know, okay, this is Indiana Jones. This is an experience, and it is very, very immersive. And so I'm very thankful that they managed to pull that off, because it could have gone so bad, but it just puts that right flavor in your mouth, and you just want more, so you keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the next section, and then after this, we can kind of more go all over the place. But yeah, the next section being like the college, more of an introductory area, and really kind of, I guess that's kind of like the act one of this movie, really setting the scene of like the adventure you're about to go on, and maybe like dipping into Vatican II. That's when you kind of are making more of these grander connections, and that kind of sets you up on the globetrotting journey. But yeah, I don't think there's much to say on the college, just gameplay wise. Like it's a pretty simple section, pretty short as well. But that's also when you get introduced to the giant, and I guess that's something I should have mentioned when we were talking about Clay's question there. But like that is in terms of like the future of Indiana Jones, what's next? There is a DLC for this game that is confirmed and they've talked about, and it's called The Order of Giants, and that's part of the pre-order bonus that they had. Which the pre-order, if you get like the premium edition upgrade from the Game Pass version, it was $40. I don't know if that's how much the DLC will be, or if it'll be a bit cheaper. I think that's another thing too. Like as much as I've enjoyed, but also not enjoyed other parts of this game, I don't think I'd be shelling out $40 to play like the DLC section for it, unless I heard it was just super good, or maybe based on the locations that it takes place in. But yeah, I should have mentioned that earlier, that there is technically already our kind of next step for what's going to come for Indiana Jones will be that DLC, which I imagine would come out next year, would be my guess. Maybe they try and tie it with the PlayStation release or something like that. But anyway, just wanted to throw that out there quickly. But yeah, any thoughts on the college section of this?
Yeah, I mean, it was neat to just kind of explore and kind of just think, okay, yeah, you're picking up things, you're examining things and whatnot. Yeah, it was fun. It was neat just because this is an iconic location from the franchise. So yeah, it was just a good stepping stone, I guess.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So what do you think about the combat in this game? How would you describe it? How would you explain this combat to someone who hasn't played it?
I'm not a big fan of it. And I'm amazed, and I give them props for how many things you can pick up and use as weapons.
Yeah.
But I don't find it very consistent when I'm trying to knock guys out from behind, or when I'm trying to actually like fight and whatnot. Like you can repair certain weapons that you have, which is great.
I never used that once. Like, were you supposed to repair improvised weapons, or I thought it was more for your gun? Like your gun will jam at some point. I did not understand that.
You can use your gun as a melee weapon.
Yes, right.
And so that's when it breaks and you have to repair it. And so that's the only time I've ever had to use it, because I don't have any melee weapons around. I had to whip the gun out to do some extra damage, and then I have to repair it and so forth.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, I think that there was a lot of fun, but also a lot of frustration when it came to the combat in this game. Well, I love that improvised weapon system. I just think it's so fun to pick up like a dirty toilet brush, or like a guitar, or a violin, or a wrench. The wrench felt very purposeful because I feel like this game shares a little bit in common with like immersive sims. Like especially in Vatican City, man. There's a level in Dishonored 2 called the Dust District, and I was like, this feels exactly like Dust District. So obviously, if it's giving me Dishonored vibes, it's a good vibe. But in general, like some of the things and the multiple ways you can use certain items, like the whip is a combat thing. It helps you with puzzles. It helps you traversal. That feels like in a very immersive sim thing. And I feel like a lot of immersive sims have like a wrench in them. That was like System Shock had a wrench as its main weapon. Prey had a wrench in there. And so I feel like that was intentional. That's one of the things you can pick up in this game. But I really love that, picking up pickaxes or sledgehammers and kind of like the different tiers within them. I agree with you. There was definitely an inconsistency of one, like, I feel like most games that have like where you can sneak up behind someone and do like a stealth takedown, it's like that's just a one button prompt thing, so you don't have to like get the timing right. But I feel like in this, like I'll charge it sometimes, but like if I don't charge it up fully, maybe it won't do the like takedown animation. Then other people, maybe you just can't do it on them. And then if someone's wearing like a helmet, often you like can't one shot them, I've noticed. But like that also didn't seem to be consistent. Some people with helmets you could one shot. So yeah, in terms of the stealth takedown, I feel like it was a gamble 50-50 every time if it was gonna work out. But otherwise, like, yeah, so mixing improvised weapons with just like hand-to-hand combat, and the whip, which you can like knock weapons out of people's hands. Seems like in trailers and stuff, I feel like you can grab people with the whip and like pull them over. I feel like I could never figure that out. I also feel like grabbing, I could never figure out how to like consistently grab someone and like suck them. Not suck them in the face with a punch.
Is that like the parrying or actually grabbing the character?
There is like a straight up grab as well. Like maybe it's from a parry. Maybe you have to block first and then grab it. That's the thing. I could not figure it out consistently. I eventually realized in the combat, like you can change the settings can change the difficulty, but you can also do like custom setting and change like all sorts of specific things. And one of the things you can do is make it so that if you're blocking, you'll automatically perfect parry if someone attacks you while you're blocking. And I turned that on for the last few sections of the game, and I really like that. I think that added a lot to the combat for me, not having to do the timing and just getting like that ability. But yeah, I found like I think maybe one of my biggest stopping points with the combat was like the stamina just felt really limited. I feel like I very quickly burned through it. And yes, you can like eat fruit to boost your stamina, and I'm sure there's books you can get that increase it as well. But maybe I just wasn't getting those things or using them enough. But I found the combat really challenging at times. Like if I was ever having to fight like 3 people or more, I would be reloading a save. Like there's no way I'm gonna win this encounter at that point, especially if you have people firing guns, people smacking you with weapons. I feel like you go down pretty quick in this game. So I found it kind of challenging in general.
I relied on Gina a lot as my partner. There was one area, very good distraction. I had to go. It was going through I was in Giza, and it was the excavation escape, and it's right before you get that whole cutscene with Voss and like his colonel guy, and there was this.
I love that cutscene, by the way. So
that was
funny.
Great.
When he pops to the floor, just drop it in. Like all these little quips. I thought that section was super fun.
I don't know how you could move that floorboard without being detected. I feel like stuff would fall. Like that was nailed in. It just blows my mind. But there was that back alley there with 3 guys, and I jumped in. I didn't know there was 3 guys there, and so I was like, oh crap. So I fought one, and then I got to bandage up. So I backed off, and then Gina just takes on the other 2 and just knocks them down. It was great. So she's a good teammate. But that cutscene though that he mentioned it, there is a moment there when you have Voss and the Colonel, and they were about to like kill each other almost. But after Indy and Gina drop in and you get this whole thing going on, Gina gets knocked out but fires a shot. It grazes past the German Colonel, and it hits the painting of Hitler, and it does like a close up on the Colonel's face, and he's
the cinematography was so good in that
so
sequence.
Good. He does like a double take and just like forgets the fight and is staring at this painting with the bullet shot like in the painting's forehead, and is like in fear and awe and like ashamed. Like it's so freaking funny. And even then, like, he's like, oh, Voss, I owe you my life. Like, oh, my God. And then they're both, like, acknowledging each other. And then Indiana Jones was like, hey, and just takes him out with a chair. Those are the Indiana Jones-isms that I really do like, so.
I think they, for the most part, picked really good moments when combat would happen through a cutscene rather than the player doing it. And something like that, like, turning it into a cinematic, turning it into a movie moment where you get like the slapstick funniness of it, but then like also it's not something you have to reload 5 times to do this boss battle. I think was really smart. I think on the opposite side of that, every boss fight in this game, in my opinion, it sucks. I hated every single one of them. Didn't like a single one. So I feel like I wish all of them had just been cutscenes, like for those big story moments against certain characters. I understand why they didn't, because I think that for a lot of people that would be underwhelming if all of those moments were taken away from game. Like, we're playing a video game here, you know, you want to do the boss fights. But after playing through all of them, I feel like I can confidently say I would have preferred if they were all cutscenes. Now, maybe I'm just saying that I would prefer that this whole game was cutscenes, but I don't think that's true. I think there's some areas and sections that I did really enjoy figuring out there. And then along with the combat, so you have a pistol at all times that you can use as long as you're using like the regular indie, I guess not disguise, but just his regular uniform. That has very limited ammo. It also takes a really long time to reload, which are things you can upgrade. But I found like, okay, that's kind of a last-ditch effort. And even for the first few hours, even as like me kind of role-playing as Indy, I'm like, he doesn't really just go around shooting people in the head very often. So I'm going to try and not do this a whole lot. I was like, I'm going to go through the whole game. I'm not going to use guns. I'm not going to kill people. I'm just going to knock them out. But then the game got really hard. And I was like, okay, I'm going to break my own rule here pretty early on. And I think they contextualize it like you're not killing them necessarily. You're just knocking them out, even though you shoot them through the head with a bullet. I mean, that's a good way to kill someone. But then I really liked how the improvised weapon system, the way that interacts with the ranged weapons too. I thought that was really fun, where you're picking up a rifle or a shotgun or something, and you have like a clip's worth of ammo, and you can use that, and it's really powerful, but you only have that one clip, so you're going to burn through it pretty quick, and then it like transfers into a melee weapon. You can like bash someone into it. I think that was just really fun, a good way to like Machine Games is known for making first-person shooters, and I think they easily could have gone overboard with you having a huge inventory of guns that you can use at all times. But I think that would not have been fitting for the character of Indy, and so they did a really good job there of making it silly and slapstick and like Indy always just barely gets through these tough fights, right? And I feel like because of the improvised weapon system, especially with the ranged weapons, they really were able to nail that part of the character.
Yeah, it caught me off guard with the extra firearms that they threw in here. Because yes, we had the pistol. That was something I was aware of, and then when I was getting near the end of the Vatican, trying to get onto the oh gosh, what are they called? The blimp? Is that what they're called?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah,
The Zeppelin.
yeah,
So I was at the top of this Vatican tower, and I snuck into this room, took out one of the Nazis, and then I was like, "Oh my god, a new gun! It's a automatic, like an SMG." So I picked it up, and I was like, "You know what? Screw this!" I was like, I was just running up there. I just gunned down like these 4 guys and got to the top, and then executed
Nice.
the cutscene. But you mentioned the boss fights. Now, I'm assuming I have one coming up pretty quick in Giza, but the one in the Vatican, with Locust, oh my god, that took me a few tries.
yeah.
I didn't have a lot of.
I put
supplies
so
going
many
in
bullets
here.
into that guy.
Oh, you were
my
shooting him.
God.
I didn't even.
I
have
was,
a
and it
my
still took a
gun.
long ass time, even though I was pelting him with bullets.
Oh, see, that's where I was repairing my gun because I didn't have the bullets. I was just smashing my gun on this
Yeah.
guy. But then I eventually figured out, okay, there's definitely a routine here, or like a rhythm. Like if you can get him to like come in and like miss grabbing you, which his reach is crazy.
Yeah.
And then you can like just start wailing on him and just like rinse and repeat. So I'm hoping all the bosses and the boss battles have that kind of rhythm that you can kind of take advantage of and exploit.
Yeah.
If not, then I'm gonna get more bullets.
Yeah, I
So-
mean, I'm sure there's a lot of tricks. Like, I don't feel like I'm very good at this game, and maybe that's part of where my combat criticisms come from. And maybe if I play the game more or replay it, I would get a bit better at it. Maybe I could iron through some of those things. Can I do a minor spoiler thing for something that
Sure.
happens later in the game? So,
Sure.
minor spoiler warning for people a little bit later in the game. You fight Locust again later in that water world, and you have to do a boss fight against him in like shallow water where the water's like up to your
Oh.
knees, so you're like super slow and you can't move or dodge very well.
Oh,
And it's like
no.
otherwise it's the same fight as like when you fought him prior, but my god, I had to redo that so many times and I was so frustrated. I was like yelling at the TV. I'm glad Muds wasn't home because I was just an angry little gamer rage baby. I was not happy with that sequence. Random question: Are the giants like smaller than you would expect a giant to be? I feel like they kept talking about how these are the giants and like they're big people, but I kind of wanted them to be like more fantasy giant, like even bigger than they were, and that might be a minor.
That would have been nice if they were. I mean, the Nephilim were bigger than this, like much
Okay.
bigger. And the way I see it, like we're talking like a few thousand years of just kind of like genetics kind of like bringing
Sure.
them down, so they're just getting a little bit smaller. That's how I view it. I really was not expecting to see giants and like possibly Nephilim descendants in here. I think that's pretty interesting. What was I gonna go with here? With Locust, that's surprising that he comes back again in the future as a boss battle, because in the Vatican I really thought that, okay, after we fight him and then he sees that Father, not Antonio, he's the good guy, but the other guy who sells out to Mussolini and Voss, and it pisses off
Yeah, well, I forget
Locust.
that guy's
and
name. Yeah.
I thought that the Vatican had some kind of connection with him, but this guy just seems to be immediately be like, "Oh, you monster! Kill the monster!" and sends like the Italian fascists
Yeah.
against him. And then you see a whole flock of giants come out, and they just
Yep.
like start throwing them around. And I thought here, Indy and him were going to be kind of on a team because he's hanging from the blimp, he's looking at Locust, and I just felt like there was kind of a mutual something going on there. But maybe they do become friends. You don't have to tell me.
Yeah.
Keep that a secret.
Well, I think one of the fun elements of this game, and I think I can say this without really it being a specific spoiler, is like a lot of people in this game, Locust, Indy, Voss, others, like are after the same things, right? Like they're all after these same stones, whatever they're called, right, to complete all this stuff. And I think that's where like a lot of this stuff leads to, where there's like sometimes people are working together or they're against each other, but like they're not necessarily just. It's not like Locust is trying to kill Indiana Jones. Right? That's not his goal in this. His goal is to like stop him from doing this thing, get these gems and whatnot. So I feel like that's kind of where it comes in, and where you can have people kind of switching sides, or maybe they'll have to work together for a bit, maybe they have to go against each other. And I think that side of it is actually really fun. And there's an interesting commentary I felt in here, where a lot of people in the world are like, Voss, terrible guy. He's destroying cultures and stealing all this stuff. And then a lot of people are like, Well, Indy, how are you any different than him? Like, yeah, you're not a Nazi. You're not just like killing people in the street. Well, I guess you are killing people in the streets if you want to in this game. But in terms of that same thing, like you're going around, you're stealing, you know, all these like cultural items from these different civilizations and whatnot. And I feel like I wish they almost went there a bit more, like especially at the end of the game. But I do think it goes some interesting places and kind of critiquing Indy for being a bit of a hypocrite at times in terms of trying to stop these forces who are like doing the exact same thing he is, and like maybe they're just coming at it from wanting to do something a little more evil or sinister with these relics or with this power, whereas he's just like interested in studying them and learning about them. But like he still is going through and like stealing shit from all these like places that I don't know. Maybe that's pretty messed up that he's stealing from. So.
For a museum,
Yeah.
that's his excuse.
Yeah, I guess so. Until someone comes to his museum and cracks open the case and steals
That's
it
right.
from in there. You are a big Assassin's Creed fan, of course. I don't know how many other stealth games are your favorites or ones that you play a lot, but what did you think of the kind of like this game kind of has that same thing of like go in loud or go in stealthy for like a lot of the encounters you can kind of pick and choose. Did you find that you were using stealth a whole lot, or how did you think of the stealth in general?
I'm using stealth a lot, but I'm not really enjoying it.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a little bit hard to make things go the way I want, where I'll pick up a glass bottle, I'll throw it as a diversion to make some guys move, but it's
Yep,
not very
classic.
refined. It doesn't really work. It kind of triggers them to kind of walk to where the bottle was thrown from, I find, which is very
Right.
annoying. But I can appreciate that you get different outfits and disguises. Those are a lot of fun. Especially in Giza, where you get like the Nazi uniform and you get the dig site uniform. Those are both really interesting and fun to use because they give you different benefits to go and do different things. I guess is the neat thing.
In Vatican, is that where you got the Nazi uniform, the black
No,
coat?
I missed the
Yeah,
what
I
was it
could
called?
not.
Like
The
the
black
black
coat,
shirts.
the black coat, I think.
Black
Or,
coats,
yeah, maybe it
yeah.
was black shirts. One of the two. Yeah, I could not find that in Vatican. I looked like I spent a lot of time in Vatican, and then when I got to Giza, I was more kind of speeding through things a little bit. But yeah, I could not find that, so I definitely want to because there's definitely a quest or two tied to that. So I'm gonna have to go back and dig through and try and find some of these things.
But you got
Um,
the one from Giza.
I did not even find that one actually. I just had the worker's
Oh.
uniform, and his standard uniform. But I didn't end up finding the Nazi uniform in Giza. So another
And
thing I missed.
it's because with that one, you basically can go into the camps, Nazi camps, without anyone calling
Right.
you out to recognize you, except the officers. If the officers stare at you too long, then
Yeah.
they'll come after you, thinking they're gonna
Yeah.
call you out. So
Yeah, I do think a lot of my criticisms for the stealth in this game might feel unfair, but it's just like I've played so much Dishonored and Deathloop and Prey in my day, and then just recently just playing like tens and tens of hours of Hitman again, which is like such a great stealth game, especially it has like the social stealth stuff with like disguises. And so this game just feels really underbaked compared to those games. Now, obviously, that's like an unfair comparison because those are some of the best stealth games ever made, right? And this game's doing a lot more than just stealth. But yeah, there are certain things like for me, the classic stuff of like making distractions, as you mentioned, is not quite as refined as you'd want. I found like enemy vision. I found it really hard to like gauge like what they would see and what they wouldn't. And then also the thing with like, yeah, officers can like see through your disguises, but I felt like it's kind of unclear like what an officer is. Like sometimes in a certain
Yes.
situation when there's only like 3 or 4 guys, it's like, okay, that guy is an officer out uniform, but then in different locations, maybe they will or won't. And then sometimes it seems like when a guy who's in an officer outfit is like not catching on to me, but then other times they are. And like Hitman's solution for this is like they just have a white dot on their head if they're an enforcer, is what they call it there, and they can see through your disguises. And you know you can turn that off if you don't want that UI breaking part, the white dot. But in this game, I found it really hard to parse like who was going to see me. I also feel like people find like more than any other stealth game, if someone starts to spot you, the counter to go like it fully spots you is really fast. So a lot of times I got caught. Another thing too is like I got really excited early on in this game when I took out an enemy for the first time and realized I could pick up and move their body, because that's a mechanic I like in stealth games in general, is like kind of clean up your mess and making sure people aren't finding those other guards in their route. But I found like I stopped doing it after a while because I found guards were like walking by other bodies and not
Yeah.
doing anything, or they'd look at it and be like, I don't know what happened to him, and then they just continue on with their path. And so after a while, I was like, I guess there's not really a point to do this, where in a game like Dishonored or Hitman, it becomes a lot more essential to hide those bodies or you're going to create a lot of havoc. So that was something that felt a little underbaked. There was like a specific camp I went through where I knocked out like half the people. A dog caught on to me. The guards found out that that was happening, and then probably within like 30 seconds, they all just went back and like stood there. And it's like, man, there's clearly evidence of like someone breaking into this camp, but it doesn't seem to do anything. This one might seem a little unfair, but I feel like a lot of stealth games, and this is not a good thing about stealth games, to be fair, is like a lot of them I feel like it's a lot about save scumming, of like constantly saving, and then whenever you get caught, reload that save, try that sequence again. Because you can't save in this game manually, as you mentioned, there's like some way I guess you can load back previous saves, but that's more like story beats rather than like, saving in a particular moment. I think it's something too that leads through it where it's like, maybe I spent like 15 minutes slowly going through this camp, but then eventually I fuck up, and then one guy feels like as soon as one guy finds you, they're like, "Bah, bah, bah, bah," they scream out to their buddies, and all of them are after you. And then if there's 20 guys after you, there's no way you're gonna survive that encounter. And then it's like, now I got to redo that whole stealth sequence again. Then I get frustrated. Then I just rush through it. Then I end up like skipping stuff. And so I don't know. None of it feels great. Leaning as well is a classic like Dishonored thing. Leaning around corners. It is so awkward to do that in this game. You like hold the left trigger down to like prepare to throw something, and then you click the sticks in, and then you have to click it back.
You can lean?
You can lean, but it is so awkward. And I don't feel like it usually when you're leaning in games, like enemies can't spot you because you're considered to be like still behind that ledge. But in this game, like they can see you very well, so it's not really that helpful. So anyway, there's my kind of laundry list of like issues I have with the stealth in this game.
I had no idea you could lean. Again, there's so many things that I'm still trying to figure out with the movements. A lot of stuff with the combat too, trying to figure that out. I mean, I know how to like push guys off, which is great because when I'm up high, there's one mission in Giza where I was trying to get up to this like scaffolding, and they were following from behind me, and so I would just kind of kite them around, back them up against this edge, and just push, and then they'd fall, and just rinse and repeat like 3-4 guys. So.
Yeah, I love that I feel like the game constantly makes fun of like Nazis are so stupid. They're not going to think of this. Like they'll be like hiding something in plain sight, and they're like, Nazis are dumb. They're not going to figure this out. And I feel like that's the same in the combat, but it's like intentional, right? Like they want them to be like kind of doofuses. Like even Voss at times is a very like dopey character. And then I forget the name of that guy, but the other guy in that scene with him that you talked about there, where the Hitler painting gets shot, like that guy is like a total goofball. But it fits the material, right? Like that we're Nazis we're dealing with here, but like they take it in a little bit more of a lighthearted way, while still being critical. One I guess criticism for the openness is because I was like amazed when I got to Vatican, especially after those first two areas that were pretty linear. Like I guess in the college you can technically walk around different ways, but it's a pretty small area. But Vatican, when I got to it, I'm like, man, I can go anywhere. I can go to these shops. I can go do side quests. I can climb up super high on these buildings. I can find hidden entrances. And I was loving it. I was like, this is cool. And I like that it's, as you mentioned, not too big. It's not too overwhelming, where I feel like I can get around the whole city pretty quickly. And it feels like the perfect amount of freedom. And then Giza's even bigger. And then I kind of feel like those are the two biggest and most open areas in the game, honestly. After that, it gets a little bit more linear for a bit. And then there's another somewhat open area. But one of the issues I had was in Vatican City, kind of right where you enter to the library normally, there's a camp right there of Nazis. And after a few hours in the game, I felt like a little bit better with the controls and the mechanics. I was like, I'm going to sneak through here and like try and find whatever goodies are hidden throughout here. So I was sneaking through, jumping behind boxes, jumping through tents, ended up having to take out a couple guys, but I did it quietly, didn't make a huge stir, hiding behind these guys, throwing a ball that'll distract one, then knock them out. And I went through and like dispatched this whole camp from the inside. Felt great. And then I got to like the last door, like the entrance, like the final area in there, and then it was locked. And I was like, oh, that's too bad. I didn't find a key anywhere. But whatever. I guess this just happens. And then at that point, I was kind of like, I feel like I wasn't really being rewarded for exploring. I'm just gonna go do main quest. That next main quest mission I did took me through that camp that I just did. So I had to do it again though. Like it respawned all the enemies, and then that door was just magically unlocked that time. And I feel like that was the moment when I was like, okay, this game is open, but it feels kind of like a fake openness. Like I feel like the proper way for me to engage with this is play through the game, just mainline it, only do main quests, and then go back to a previous area. Once I've gotten past Vatican, then I know I'm not going to have some weird progress block thing. But that happened like 2 or 3 times for me, and then it got to a point where I was like, yeah, I'm not really going to explore much anymore. Like maybe if there's a minor quest like directly on my path to the main quest, I'll stop and do it. But it kind of just it felt like there was a bit of fake openness to it, which was kind of a frustrating thing. And there was another camp too where I went all the way through, and I was doing to like help break this kid who was like prisoned, and I could just not find the key for this thing. I don't know where the heck this key is supposed to come from, or if it was hidden somewhere and I couldn't find it. But I looked for quite a while and could not find it, and so got to a point where I was kind of turned off of, I don't know, really exploring the game's edges, and I felt like I should just really kind of mainline it. So I don't know, where are you at with it now? Like, are you doing a lot of side quests? Are you kind of just mainlining it? How have you kind of been playing with the freedom of the game?
I thought I was doing a few different side quests, but I think for the most part I'm just mainlining it, which is fine by me because the main story is just so engaging for me. That's my favorite thing. I haven't really taken much of an interest in some of the side stuff, like, oh, if you see 15 medicines, get them for me. It's
Sure.
like, well, I don't think I'm going to do that. So I'm curious, can you revisit some of these places? Like
Yep.
when I left the Vatican, I was thinking, am I done? Can I go back? And I wasn't sure.
Yeah, if you pop open your menu that has like your journal and stuff, and you scroll over to the far right tab, I think it's called travel. You can just go back to any areas that you've been
Okay.
to before. I don't know if any of them are limited. And once I beat the game, it's really nice. By the way, go ahead, beat the game, roll credits, and then it like takes you right back before the end of the final quest, and then all the areas are unlocked now, so you can go back and explore all of them freely. But yeah, you can at least go back to Vatican, and I think you can go back to college. I don't know if you can go back to the Raiders of the Lost Ark sequence where you're at in the game, but you can at least go back to like the open areas and yeah, go do quests, go do things. So that's a good way if like you're feeling underpowered, go back to an earlier area, get some more upgrades, that kind of thing. But yeah, I think that's another thing too, is like there's nothing disincentivizing you from just blasting through the main game, seeing the story, and then going back and doing the bonus stuff or the main quests you want to do later. And I think for me, like, I don't know how much more I'm going to go back. I think there's a couple more side quests I'd like to do that seem interesting. But yeah, I yeah, definitely don't be scared. You're not going to lose any access to anything if you just kind of mainline through the game.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what else do I want to say on Vatican specifically? I mean, I really liked that sequence. I didn't think I'd like it as much as I did, but even like the opening, the intro to it when it's nighttime and you're kind of sneaking around the walls, I found that was a really fun stealth sequence for me. That worked really great, and I think it's just like when the game's linear, it can make a really good stealth level, but when the game's more open, it's harder for them to get it right, in my opinion. Especially when when there's 20 guards just outside this one area you're stealthing through, and they can all get triggered immediately if you get caught. Like, that's not a great feeling. So yeah, I really enjoyed exploring Vatican, like finding little hidden puzzles all over the place, going through like the doors leading to all sorts of crazy places. And as I mentioned, I did have a couple of those annoying like progress block moments, but for the most part, I really enjoyed exploring that. And honestly, I think that is kind of the peak of the game for me. I think I even overall liked Vatican, that section, more than the Giza section, like as a whole. And then I think the game kind of goes downhill a little bit there for me. But yeah, like I really liked Vatican, all the story stuff, all the characters, all the kind of gameplay of it. I thought it was kind of the game's best area.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was definitely an eye opener because you're in this first area here. I guess your third area. But it was just like, wow, okay, we got so much going on, and it took me a while to figure out, okay, now it's not very linear here. It's all one open area that you can explore and do different things. And so that took me a fair minute to actually figure out and recognize, but I enjoyed it because yeah, you're doing different things, you're unlocking different things, and it was actually a lot of fun. And that kind of sets the tone for like, okay, when we get to our next location, it's going to be, again, it's rinse and repeat the same thing in a very good way, not a bad way. So I really did enjoy that, and there's so much to do and a lot going on in the Vatican City. So it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy doing those puzzles. And you get your camera, so it's fun to just be kind of go around
Yes.
taking photos of certain things because it's your clue tool, which I think is a great kind of incorporation and utilization for that in your inventory.
Yeah, great point. I love the camera in this game. I think it's fun that it really, if I'm walking around and everything in a place looks crazy and historic and like interesting, I don't really know like what's actually some big historical thing and what just like is a cool piece of art that the artist made. But I think the camera can help like contextualize some of those things and show you like, ooh, this is a 4-star find. Like, this is a very rare thing that you're finding. But then also, as you mentioned, like that being the way that you unlock clues, I think is really smart. Like sometimes characters in the story will like, hey, can you go get a picture of this thing? Like Father Antonio's like, hey, go get pictures of all these different wells or these symbols, whatever they were, and then like bring them back to me. And that was like a fun thing. I liked doing that. And then there's a really cute moment like way later on in the game where you're in like this kind of smaller village where they don't have as much technology, and the guy's like, hey, can you just take a picture of me? Like, I just want a picture of myself and I'll give you some money I'll give you a few coins. I didn't even want to take his money. I'm like, I just want to give this to you, man. I don't mind taking a picture of you. And that was like a very cute thing. So I thought that was like a really really great just tool in the game in general. And then, you know, mixed in with that, like I just love that the menu and all that is like contextualized within like the book, right? Like
Yes.
his classic journal where he keeps all his notes. And yeah, like I'm just like reading the actual text on there, but I like that on all that. He opens up the book, like the pictures that you've taken, not the exact ones. I think they're kind of more stock image ones of the things that you're taking pictures of are put in there, little notes, little sketches, and then like the descriptions are put on either side around that. I really love the UI in this game. I think it's very simple and effective. And even like that's kind of how you access the skill tree too, which not really a skill tree, but you're just getting like skill books and you can put points into them, that kind of thing. So yeah, I really like all that. I like that all the maps aren't just like some default map thing. It's like an actual map that would have been made for this area. So it's always contextualized to like the look or the technology or like the aesthetic of the area, Vatican being fancier, or maybe like a rough sketch that you're getting. Whether you're in a dungeon or the overworld, you kind of have like different maps. And I really enjoyed that part of it. I feel like they really nailed that archaeologist explorer feel of the game.
Yeah. Well said.
Let's take our last break here. I don't think we have much more to discuss, but we'll take one more break and we'll be right back. Okay, we are back. Any other highlights from Giza as an area, considering that you're kind of right near the end of it?
Small little things like dealing with scorpions. I had a lot of fun with that. You light a torch and you just like
I hate the
sway
scorpions,
that.
but I love that you like the scorpions.
Oh yeah, I had fun with it because you just like you swish the torch and it makes them move away. So that was a lot of fun. A lot of snakeisms too with Indy, that was always good. That was humorous. What else? I feel like there's just so many different tombs that you can just go in, and I think that's because you're trying to find like the stele stuff. So because there's quite a few of them that you can track down. You have 4 in the initial quest, and then it's funny because I didn't even get the 4 that I was supposed to that it highlighted. I just found other tombs and found other stele. I was like, cool. Okay, well that's fun. That's kind of neat. Yeah, so it's just a really really cool area. It's neat to explore it, and now that I got my officer's uniform, I'm probably going to go check out a few of the bases, the restricted zones, to see what I can kind of like swipe and steal. Because there's definitely a lot of things that you can take.
Do you remember where you got that outfit from?
Yes. So after you escape from you are going with Gina into the compound. You find the tunnel that's painted like with the red markings. You go in there. So after you go through that whole shindig, the whole thing, and then basically you meet what was her name? Nawal, I think.
Dame Nawal, yeah.
Yeah. So you meet.
I love Dame Nawal. Don't really have a reason why. I just think she's great. Love the performance. Love the look. She's very
fun.
Hopeful as well. So really liked her. Yeah.
She's fun. Yeah. So she closes the cave behind you guys as you get in, and then Gina goes off on her way, and then you guys go together to get out of your your exit. And when you come out of that tunnel exit, it's right adjacent to the military compound. There's a tower, and basically you can throw your whip, you can climb the tower, and you just knock out the off-duty guard at the top there, and you go downstairs and you find the uniform. And the uniform also has the Wernerschlag key or whatever, and that key
I remember seeing multiple
everywhere.
gates. Yeah, that I was locked out of. Cool, that's great. I'll go do that for sure. Nice. Yeah, I think Giza is definitely the biggest area, like biggest open world section in the whole game. And I think it's great, like whether that's the opening town sequence, whether it's like tombs everywhere, caves everywhere, just walking around looking at the pyramids, like the Sphinx, and kind of feeling the scale of everything was really cool. Even though obviously if everything's much closer than maybe it is in real life. The town area, I really liked walking around the town. It doesn't feel like there's actually much to do there, but just like looking around at all the people and what they're doing, walking around the little like farm area down below. Like the train that comes by every once in a while, the different like enemy camps that are set up. Really, really cool area. And there's even a couple like bigger excavation sites that I didn't jump into yet just because they weren't part of the main quest stuff. So I definitely, I think I want to go grab that outfit and then go check out more of those. So yeah, really, really great area. Beautiful as well. And I like that they kind of contextualize like the bounds of the map by like, it kind of like looks miragey and you like start to get like a little bit a little sand drunk. You start to like pass out a little bit if you get too close, and then you kind of have to like turn around eventually. So I thought that was pretty fun. I think my last points are really just like once again highlighted a couple of the characters here. Once again, Indy, we've talked about him a bit here, but like he fits right in with the Indy of the movies, and I think that's like the biggest compliment you can give. Great voice performance here. Character wise, I think he has about as much dimension as he ever does in these movies. I think him and Gina have a really fun dynamic. Of course, it kind of starts out as like just mutual people trying to help each other out, and then a mutual friends, and then of course like a little bit more that kind of stuff. It's always he always has to have like a love interest in these things, right? But I think they have really great chemistry. The voice actress for Gina is also really really great. She's a really fun character. I think she has like the silliness to her as well. Like there's a couple things later in the story that come up with her. And then I think like she gets some good emotional stuff too. Obviously, like, part of her story, she's trying to find her sister, and that's like what's leading her through this story. And then Indy wants to help her out too, while also like she's a good resource to have. So, and then like that she helps you out in some combat sequences is not too shabby as well. And then we Father Antonio, you mentioned him. I think is really fun dynamic between him and Indy. Just like this old friend element to it, and like they're just listening to music with each other, have music recommendations, working on things. And it feels like, especially in Vatican, like who can you trust? The answer is like no one except for him. He's like the one guy that you can really trust. So he's like a comforting guy to always come back to the library, see what he's up to. Like really every character. There isn't a character I dislike in this game. I think they really nailed it across the board, narratively and voice acting wise, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, the characters are spot on. I think they're great. They're fleshed out, and I love that their relationships with Indy all really, really just deliver. They're all great. And Gina, her story with her sister missing, and how everyone just kind of knows each other, which I really like. That kind of in such a big global adventure, everyone still is familiar with each other to some slight degree. Well, Gina's investigative reporter or journalist, she's not very informed on the whole archaeological side of things, but when she puts her sister's name out there, then Indy's like, oh, I know who she is, the most like the number one on ancient languages or dead languages. And then basically he's talking to Nawal, and Nawal is like, oh yeah, Marcus Brody, da, da, da. And it's like, oh, you know Marcus, da, da, da. And then I love when the bad guys know Indy, because it's funny, in that same cutscene we're talking about, I was thinking, man, these bad guys don't actually know that Indy is onto them, and Indy has such an upper hand right now. Like, this is pretty crazy. And as soon as I said that, then the ceiling came in and Indiana Jones stands up, and Voss is like, Indiana Jones. I was like, oh, okay. This is just, it's so great. Every character is just, it's been great. It's delivered.
Very nice. Yeah, I guess maybe one last thing for me would just be the, big part of this game is like exploring tombs, being a tomb raider, solving puzzles. I think that's kind of hit or miss for me, honestly. Like some of them are a little bit weaker. Some of the puzzles feel a bit like, okay, we're putting gears in places to make all these gears connect. Okay, I've seen that a million times before. But then other times I think there's some really interesting ones. Some of them were like a bit too confusing for me, or like I just could not understand them at all. I had to use the hint system, but the hint system is there. But yeah, I think specifically in Giza, that's where maybe some of the better ones were. Like there's some fun traversal ones. You have to like jump over, piping hot spots in the floor. There's like the I don't know, big blades kind of flipping back and forth. And then some of the puzzles there I enjoyed quite a bit. I also really like that one in Vatican. I think it's when you're going into the Fountain of a Confession, I think it's what it's called. And there's like that big square thing that's rotating.
Yes.
You have to set water up in one of those buckets, then move it over, and then it like dumps the water into the thing. I really liked that set piece. So there's definitely some highlights in there. I do think most of the best ones are in like the first half of the game, unfortunately. But that's just my general take across the whole game, is that the second half's like weaker as an experience. So I don't know. Any other things that we have not mentioned here, Taylor?
Ooh, I can't think of anything. I think we covered it all.
Cool. Sounds good. Yeah, I don't know when or if we will talk like spoiler-wise about the end of the game, just because of the time of year that we're getting to here, where they don't have a lot more episodes before like Game of the Year stuff and whatnot. But maybe it'll come up at some point, a spoiler discussion sometime down the road. I know Travis is playing the game too, so I'm sure we'll hear his thoughts on the game later down in the future as well. And then I don't know, like let's presumably say that you enjoy the game as much as you are now, and that DLC comes out and it is like $40. Do you think you'd pick that up? Would you be that interested, considering that Game Pass kind of put you in the door for free here ish to play this?
No, the DLC I'd probably watch a video for,
Yeah.
to be honest. I don't feel like that commitment, especially because that storyline, assuming it's with oh gosh, drawing a blank on his
The
name.
Giants, the
Yes,
Locusts?
the giant locust. Yeah, I don't really see much of a pull into that dynamic
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah, I think for me it would come down to like what are the locations that they go with, and presumably like you'll get at least one or two more like very open ended levels like Vatican or Giza, and if like one of those was like I don't know a Himalayan town with some like caves to explore, like that's my jam. So maybe I would pick it up for that reason, or I don't know. I'd have to think about what other locations I would like to see that would really get me in there. But I think there maybe could be some that would sell me, but. We will see. Taylor, thank you for joining me. This is a very fun discussion on Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Enjoy the second episode of Sidequest this week, which we're about to go record in the next 10 minutes here. And yeah, we will see you again next time. Bye-bye.